This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
And this is Franchise Today for Wednesday, October 30th, 2019. I'm Stan Friedman, coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, before we get into this week's extensive birthday greetings, I want to once again thank last week's guest, Connie Hill Johnson of Cleveland, Ohio, who is an amazing franchisee of Visiting Angels. You know, I don't often have franchisees as guests, but this was a powerful interview following the Franchising 101 program that Connie and I both participated in last week, a week ago Saturday, actually, in Cleveland. It was a co-production of KeyBank and the IFA. My interview that followed with Connie was a frank and candid discussion about diversity in franchising, which many of you know has been something of a passion of mine for a great many years. And judging by the incredible number of downloads that last week's episode scored in the first few days after it was posted, it seems that many others too were quite interested in what Connie had to say. I'm extremely proud of that episode. If you've not done so yet, please download it, give it a listen, and then share it out with others who may benefit from the wisdom that Connie shared. And now with that said, it's on to the front of the house, brought to you this week by Transitive, where Christian Pillett and his team provide franchisors and franchisees with cutting-edge, high-tech solutions that enable the identification of their most valued customers and enables them to drive laser-sharp conversational marketing messages directly to those targets. More about Transitive in just a minute. But first, it's time for this week's franchise birthdays, and an expansive list it is, with many happy returns going out this week to Ron Cordova, Darren Bothy, Igor Bloom all the way across the other side of the world in Moscow, Stephen Spitz down under, Brian Mulcahy, David Washabaugh, Ed Moldaver, Michael Barnett, Mark Carnes, Ed Novetti, Gary Finley, Richard Davies in the UK, Rich Piteous, Carrie Jernigan, and Mark Street. Wow, there it is. Quite a list this week. Also in the front of the house, I could not help but take notice of an article that impressed me this week as published in the New York Times. It was a piece written by Paul Sullivan under the banner of Your Money and Wealth Matters. It was titled, How to Get Rich by Buying a Franchise. This piece was written mostly through the eyes and views of successful franchisees across a variety of brands and was very clearly articulating the difference between operating a business, say a plumbing or a moving business, as a mover on the truck or as a wrench-wielding pipe fixer in a van versus actually growing and scaling a business of those types as the result of being affiliated nationally with a franchise brand. The examples in this article point amazingly well to the power of the brand, the marketing, the technology, and the leadership expertise provided by the franchisor, but it still rightly cautioned individuals to conduct proper due diligence before taking any leaps. The article quotes Daryl Johnson at Data, as well as Jeff Johnson at Franchise Research. It actually is a rare day anymore that I find something worth reading, much less sharing, from the New York Times, as it's become such an overtly and adversely political publication. But hats off on this piece. It was both fair and balanced, and it was actually quite well written. So I'm going to post it up to the Franchise Today Facebook page on my LinkedIn profile as well, and share it out to you. And I think it's something that's worth keeping as a resource tool and sharing with others. Okay, so let's take a quick break, learn a little bit more about Transitive, and then we'll be right back with this week's guest, Zaxby's own Trey Doster.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Hey, Stan Friedman here with a word about our newest sponsor. I'm talking about Transitive, an amazing marketing platform that actually delivers what others can only imagine: accurate, dependable results that are second to none. All right, without getting too deep into the weeds, Transitive connects franchisees' customer data from all sources, providing high-octane fuel for their marketing engines. They then deploy machine learning, yes, artificial intelligence, which identifies various customer traits and habits, attributes that would otherwise likely go unnoticed, and it segments these customers into groups. This is important because as we know, not all customers provide your franchisees with equal dollar value. But wouldn't it be great if they could easily identify who's who? Well, that's exactly what Transitive does. And what's more, it then accurately drives the appropriate offers to each of those customer groups, delivering specific personalized messages to each of the group's customers. Just like that, your franchisees are engaged in laser-focused target marketing, delivering them much more bang for the buck. You've got to see it to believe it, so what are you waiting for? Order up a demo today and tell them I sent you. Find them online at www.transitive.io. That's www.transitive.io. And now for today's guest interview. Trey Doster is Director of Franchise Sales for Zaxby's Franchising, and he's double times because he also serves as Chairman of the Board of the Southeast Franchise Forum, IFA's franchise business network affiliate here in Atlanta. Trey's been with Zaxby since 2007, joining the brand at the 325 restaurants open mark, and has contributed directly with moving that high water mark to now more than 900 open and operating. Prior to his current role as Director of Franchise Recruitment, Trey's responsibility was split between FranDev and real estate and site selection. Trey earned his IFA Certified Franchise Executive designation in 2014 and has been an active and participating member of the Southeast Franchise Forum for more than 10 years prior to assuming his leadership role as chair. Trey, welcome to Franchise Today.
Thank you very much, Stan. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today on your show.
Well, it's great having you, and I think it's long overdue, Trey. You're one of those guys that everybody loves. Everybody who knows you just likes you. It's hard not to, and you're always a guy who's there for others and doing service to the world of franchising, both locally here at home and all over the country through the IFA. So, Trey, let's start where we start every week. Franchising is unintentional. It's not something that we study for. It's not something that we aspire to. It's something that knocks on our door at some point in time and finds us. So take the audience back with us to a ride back in time and share with us when that was for you and what you were doing at that time.
You know, I guess franchising found me in a lot of ways. My next door neighbor growing up, and actually both of the founders lived in the same town that I grew up in Oconee County. And one of them was actually my next door neighbor growing up and saw the very first Zaxby's that I had heard of in 1996, even though the brand started in 1990. And my first experience was at the restaurant in our hometown of Walkersville, Georgia. And first experience in there was a great one, and saw the company growing. And as that, continued to grow, I wanted to be a part of it. It just, hometown boys really doing something really well, and I wanted to be a part of it.
What was it that you were doing then? What did you leave when you came into franchising? What did you leave behind?
Well, so Vance Snow, who a lot of people know in the franchising world, he was responsible for bringing me on. So if anybody's going to take the blame for bringing me on to Zaxby's, it'd be Vance. And so Vance was, just an incredible person and mentor for me. And the thing that I learned very quickly about, specifically our franchise process is it wasn't a sales process. Both of the owners were really focused on making sure that people that joined on with the brand truly knew what they were getting into. There was a lot of upside to starting your own business, but sometimes they don't think about some of the harder things you may face as a small-time business owner, and just all the things that it's going to require of your time and efforts, and all the different hats that you may have to wear in order to get that first location running. And so our discovery day, if you'd call it that, to a certain degree back then, really was almost talking someone out of the opportunity. They were hearing all the things that have gone wrong over the years. So, we weren't trying to surprise anyone with trying to get them to the signing page. It truly was about getting them kind of acclimated to what the culture was, who the brand is, what it's made up of, and and what we were trying to do as an organization. And so if we felt like we were both a good fit for each other, then that's kind of when we move forward in a partnership.
So talk about some of those formative years, Trey. What did they put you through other than that, sticker shock of 400-page document or whatever it was? What kind of training and what kind of orientation did you get to the ins and outs of franchising?
For me, with Zach McElroy and Tony Townley, they're not brothers, but they grew up together. And so this company, this feels more like a family, and they treat us like family. And so, people that have worked within the brand when I came on board had been there since really the beginning. Some of the people that actually worked at corporate were franchisees at one point or have gone on to be franchisees. And so it really was overwhelming not knowing the family. I felt like everyone knew each other except for myself. And so it takes a long time to kind of get up to speed with, just from the corporate standpoint, let alone trying to integrate into the franchisee family that you have out there. But, a big part of my days in the beginning was just reading franchising publications, attending different franchising functions like the IFA, the Southeast Franchise Forum, which is where I first met you, Stan, and getting to meet people that this is what they do and they live and breathe franchising, and just really overwhelming the information that's out there that I had a lot to learn to be able to get up to speed, to feel like I could talk intelligently to prospective franchisees. So a big part of my day was just kind of shadowing people. I would kind of go with Vance and Tommy. Tommy Mitchell was doing our real estate at the time. He now has his own real estate firm, Dirt Dog LLC. I'll give him a plug there. Continues to do franchise site selection for franchisees, and so they let me shadow them on site selection as well as discovery days, and then go into franchise events where we would promote the brand. So that was a lot of fun in those early days. I didn't have to do a lot. I just kind of hung around and just listened to kind of what the experts were doing.
Why don't you share with the audience a little bit about the consumer side of the Zaxby's brand and the value proposition that Zaxby's as a concept and as a brand delivers to the consumer? There's a lot of competition out there in your space, Trey, but you guys have always seemed to ride above the fold and have a product that was almost cult-like. Can't say it's as much like Chick-fil-A, but to me, there is a cult around Zaxby's too. There is a cult-like loyalty to the brand. Talk a little bit about that from the consumer's point of view.
Probably the absolute majority of our franchisees, they were fan favorites of the brand. They were people that were dining with us 3 or 4 times a week that just loved the product, that wanted to be a part of this. And so we're so thankful for that and feel so blessed that we've been able to keep those guests coming back again and again. And I think a big part of that is making sure that we treat them well when they come into our locations, make them feel like that they are that they're respected and appreciated, because to your point, Stan, there are so many options out there for our guests to go these days. And so we want to try to provide a great meal at a great value. And because we know that if we don't do it right, there's other options out there.
And for the 1 or 2 people out there who may never have heard of Zaxby's, I can't believe that would be the case. Talk a little bit about the primary menu offerings and what it is that Zaxby's is famous for.
So yeah, this is a big part of what we do at our franchise events, that we're outside of our core footprint. We're having to explain what Zaxby's is to a lot of people, which is a little humbling because we have 240 locations alone just in Georgia. So most people, if you're in Georgia, you know what Zaxby's is. But as we go out into Texas and Oklahoma and those markets, we have to explain to people that we meet at events kind of what the brand is. And we were founded on hand-breaded chicken fingers, prepared to order. We did not have salads in the early days, but around 2005, we came out with a kind of a premium salad rollout that we continue to kind of add on to. We have a salad base, but each quarter we may have an LTO that comes out, whether it's sandwich or salad. But our sandwiches are a lot of times they're messy, but they are unbelievable sandwiches. Right now we have our smokehouse cheddar barbecue sandwiches out, and it is a meal. It is a fantastic sandwich that you won't go home hungry.
And what percentage of your business would be, say, eat in versus people picking food up and possibly delivery, if that's part of the menu mix?
So we've got some franchisees that are doing delivery these days, but not every market is a good candidate for that. But, a big part of what we've seen a shift in is, our restaurants continue to get bigger and bigger. We're actually starting to kind of bring those restaurant seating down a little bit. I think for a lot of years, we were building a 90-seater and kind of shifting back towards a 60-seater because we're doing about 62% of our business through the drive-through these days.
62% is an astounding number for drive-through. So yeah, I would be maybe even thinking of, instead of 90 down to 60 seats, 60 down to 45, if 62% of the revenue is coming through the window, because that's a big number.
our customers, they like convenience. We feel like that our product, if we serve it correctly, they want it, and we want to be able to deliver it to them as quickly as possible. We used to, in the early days, used to have a sign out front, inside of front of house and at the drive-through of the speaker that said, "We're not fast food. We're prepared to order. Please allow 10 to 15 minutes for your order. We feel like you'd appreciate the difference." And we did have guests that would wait on the product because we felt like that it was good enough to wait on. But we did have a shift around 2007 where speed of service became a real focus for us as a brand, and it served our franchisees well in trying to get those ticket times to where we can get more customers in and out, especially within the lunch breaks. The thing that we don't want to do there is sacrifice order accuracy and the product that our guests are receiving when they come through. So we want to make sure that it's still fresh and prepared to order, and that they're getting the right thing that they ordered when they come through, so they'll want to come back again and again.
I'm still thinking a second drive-through is what my mind's eye is seeing, Trey. A second window. Who is the customer? Who's primarily your demographic? What drives the business? Is it the kids telling mom and dad, "I want to go to Zaxby," or is it mom and dad saying Zaxby's is where we're going and the kids are happy to hear it?
I think it's a little bit of both. My daughter is 15 now, but when I came on with the brand, it was if I even gave her the option of where we're going to go to eat, it would be Zaxby's almost every day. And so certainly the kids would love to come in. I think because of our diverse menu selection, we've got a little something for everyone there. So if you want to have a salad, or if it's a sandwich, or if it's chicken fingers, or even a grilled cheese for the kids, there's a little bit of something for everyone. But really, we've done really well as far as transitioning into demographically different markets. So as we started in Georgia and have kind of moved our way in a western pattern and also in a northern pattern, we have found that in small towns, we may be sometimes in these small towns, which we're so thankful to be a part of. We may be one of the nicer buildings in that town, and that's kind of the go-to destination on the weekends. And then in the more dense markets, it's a little harder to break into those, just because there is so much competition. But its primary focus is making sure that when someone comes in, they have a great experience, so they want to come back.
And so I know that when I was in the chicken wing business, salads weren't a part of our business primarily either, until we realized that a lot of the telephone decisions about who to call for food were driven by mom. And if mom wanted a salad and we didn't have one, somebody else was getting the phone call that day. Was that kind of decision part and parcel of your brand's decision to bring salads into the menu mix?
Absolutely. It really was. And, I think the biggest issue we had as far as pushback with franchisees, and I think they would tell you this if you asked them, was, we wanted this to be a premium product. So we're starting off with a base of different greens, and then we're putting fresh protein and produce on top. So nothing's sitting in a refrigerator. It is fresh and prepared to order, but it's also coming in a real bowl if you have the time to dine with us inside of one of our restaurants. And so for a franchisee standpoint, that's a lot of bowls to now have to wash. And so that was the pushback. But we felt like that could be something that really sets us apart from some other competitors out there that may have a good product, but it's this is just a little step above, or maybe a few steps above. And it's also just from the presentation standpoint, it really, if you've never had it before, it is sure to knock your socks off.
And I know wings are on the menu, but I view Zaxby's more, as you said, about tenders than I do about wings. And from a cost of goods sold, I'm certain that that's a lot friendlier too for your franchisees, that they're not confronted with the crazy wild roller coaster rides that chicken wing prices can cause for franchisees in wing only type businesses. Am I correct?
You are correct. And, when McDonald's decided to kind of jump into the wing category there for a short bit, it just really affected everyone. They were the 400-pound gorilla, and rightfully so. So, it did give us the ability to kind of shift some of the things we were focusing our efforts on, whether it was boneless wings or some other things, to be able to try to take some of the pressure off there.
So let's shift away from the consumer side a little bit and start delving more into the franchising side of life at Zaxby's. The company, as I said in introduction, was about the 325 mark of open and operating when you came on board. You're north of that by another 600 plus these days. How much has the initial offering changed from those early days, and what has it changed from and to, and why?
That's a great question. As far as the opportunity, it's as good as today as it's ever been. It is. I feel like we offer world class service and support. From the very from the initial stages of you coming on as a franchisee, you're receiving, hand holding, especially if you've never done this before. If you're an experienced operator, you don't need as much hand holding, but we're certainly making sure that these first time franchisees are getting the support that they need to get their location up and running. But the thing that we've seen that has been really tough for us and a lot of standalone brick and mortar locations is the cost of real estate. We're in a great economy right now. Real estate costs continue to go up. So things that we're trying to do from the standpoint of lowering the all-in investment for our new franchisees and existing franchisees who want to continue to build. We want to try to bring that all-in cost down. And so we're actually kind of in a little bit of holding pattern right now because we have a new prototype that's coming out here very shortly that our franchisees are excited about. So as soon as this is open, we're back to opening up locations. This has been kind of a slower year for us because we're waiting on that rollout.
And you mentioned that you let first-time franchisees into your system that didn't have any prior food experience. That's a rarity, Trey, especially in a concept that's a little more complex. I can see it, in a sandwich making shop where you don't have a hood and you don't have fryers, but that's an exception, isn't it, in the food service business?
It really is. And, it was tough during the downturn in the economy, 2008 and 9, really all the lending kind of dried up for the restaurant space. And, I'm not sure if in franchising in general, but I can tell you in the restaurant space, if they didn't have restaurant experience, we really were having a tough time trying to find lenders that would take a bet and take a chance on these first time franchisees. And really when there's a downturn in the economy, that's really when franchising soars. So that was kind of what's not helpful for us because we like taking someone that has the ability to coach up teams. And, if we just feel like they have transferable skill sets that will serve them well, and, if they're a fan of the brand, that's somebody we want to take a chance on. We feel like that we can train them in the business. The hardest part is the people component. It's building teams and getting an infrastructure put into place for that first location. And we feel like we offer the support to make franchisees, have those skill sets available to them where we can help coach them.
And as to the offerings themselves, are these all offered as owner-operator only, or do you have multi-unit and area development?
Yeah, we sure do. So if someone wants to come in, that there's some brands that are out there, they're only offering multi-unit opportunities, and that for whatever reason that works well for their system. With us, it truly is about the fit of the individual we're working with. So if we're talking to someone who wants to transition from corporate America, or if they're a UPS driver that they're ready to do something different, one store is totally fine. We would just want to make sure that the area that they're looking at is a one store opportunity. We wouldn't let someone with one location, with the appetite of one store, go into an area that would hold multiple locations, because then we have a situation where franchisees are they're not able to kind of control their backyard, and they don't really look at each other as allies.
So you have multiple offerings. Their offerings are experience appropriate, I guess, is the way I would term that then, right?
That's exactly right. And depending on kind of their experience, if we have someone that's come in that has been with another brand and has brands currently, that give us a little more of a comfort level to take a bet that that they have the ability to build an infrastructure if they don't have one already, and that they can probably sign for a multi-unit development agreement.
And you talked about in the recession years, when access to capital was a challenge, that you couldn't necessarily find banks that were willing to lend to somebody with no franchise or no food experience. But do you find that's easier now?
It is. We've, thankfully, we've been very blessed with some very hardworking franchisees, and Zach and Tony. They are actually the two founders of the company, are the largest. We call them company stores, but really they're the largest franchisee in the system, operating about 150 of their restaurants. We call company stores, but really they're franchisees. And so, because we have a very low failure rate, our lending friends really like the business model. They like that there's real estate that's involved, and so all those things. We haven't really had an issue with getting funding for our franchisees today. We've been very fortunate in that regard.
And as to the real estate itself, Trey, you don't treat that like a McDonald's does where they own the real estate, do you? Your franchisees actually own the property or own the land, the building itself. How does that look?
That's exactly right. So Zach and Tony, when they started, they really enjoyed the real estate play there, and a lot of our franchisees kind of mirrored what they were doing. And so we certainly have franchisees that they're on ground leases or they've worked with a developer, and you can absolutely do that if that's kind of the way that you want to build your infrastructure. But most of our franchisees, I think if you asked them that have done some of those build-to-suits, if they were to look back, they would really like the opportunity of owning the real estate just as a long-term strategy. So at the end of their franchise agreement, they can be a landlord. If second generation doesn't want to go in there, or if they want to have another franchisee of Zaxby's go in, it just gives them more options.
Trey, we're going to come back after another quick break, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the development side of the business. And before we're done here today, we're going to talk to you about your roles, responsibilities, and how lucky we are to have you chairing the board for us on the Southeast Franchise Forum. We're going to come back with all that and more, but first this.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
This portion of Franchise Today is brought to you by Zoracle, providers of spot-on profiles, the gold standard of assessment tools that assure you're selecting the right franchisees every time. Unlike DISC or others that simply gauge personality or communication styles, Zoracle's spot-on assessments are all franchise-specific and based upon 7 sciences that nail the results each and every time. Your prospects simply answer a few questions online, and like magic, Zoracle's algorithms scientifically slice, dice, and analyze their thresholds for risk, their business acumen, and even their propensity for single or multi-unit ownership. Zoracle's spot-on analysis is like having a crystal ball, but there's no hoodoo here. It's all based upon science that flawlessly determines franchisor compatibility and accurately predicts performance. Why don't you schedule a demo today? Take a complimentary look and see for yourself. It's the closest thing to a sure thing. Zoracle, spot-on assessments based on science, but delivering results that seem simply magical. Check them out at www.zoracleprofiles.com. Trey, I'm going to run the risk of a little bit of wordplay here, but part of what we do every week on Franchise Today is to try to deliver to an audience of people who aren't yet where your company is or haven't yet accomplished the achievements of a Zaxby's, the emerging franchisors, and even some of the executives that are working for smaller concepts, is to provide them nuggets. And there's that word that I was afraid might be a double meaning talking to a guy in the chicken business, but nuggets are what we want to share out every week and helping the audience not perhaps have to go through some of the mistakes that others who came before them have already encountered. You talked about a couple of things that I think are pretty powerful, and I want to flesh them out a little bit further. One was the all-in cost and how you've kind of put the brakes on until a revision to the model can be adjusted such that Zach and ownership are more concerned about the long-term recurring revenue than about grabbing checks. What's your message to any franchisor who is letting himself get a little bit ahead of his headlights in that regard?
For us, and I'd recommend this for any franchisor out there, is always keeping unit level economics front and center of every decision you're making. If you keep the franchisee's bottom line in perspective of the decisions that you're making, you'll do right by the brand and you'll also do right by your franchisees. And so that's been a big part of our intentional slowdown, is to make sure that we have stores that are, that have the right legs underneath them, they have the right infrastructure, and that they're ready for that store number 2 and 3. So an intentional slowdown is what we are hoping will make these franchisees that have joined us continue to be sustainable.
When your heads are down and you're full bore in your franchise development cycle, what would a typical year look like for new unit development? What would that magic number be?
What we want for our franchisees, if they're taking a chance on the brand, is we want to make sure that several things need to be in place in order for us to try to give them the best shot of success. And a big part of that is that they have brand awareness, so people know what the brand is. If we jump too far out of our footprint, that's going to be an extra hurdle that they have to jump over. But we also want to make sure if they're close enough to some other stores that there's ease of distribution, there's marketing dollars that come into play. So all those things really play well with each other if we can kind of keep the stores close. And so that allows us to kind of continue to grow the brand in an outward motion from our core. And we just did start in Georgia. and we're now in 17 states. There are 5 states that are completely sold. So if you were to come in today as a new franchisee, we'd have Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee would be states that we're not offering a new franchise agreement to a new franchisee. So we've got some undeveloped existing development agreements with existing franchisees that will come up here and there when the opportunities present themselves. But all of our new development that we have are in the balance of those 17 states, and it really is a small ribbon. If you look at our development map that we have available at our website at zaxbysfranchising.com, you'll see that there are counties that go across, and it will show all the different opportunities. And we're looking specifically for people that are in those markets. So we really don't want someone who's from Georgia that wants to move to Texas. We feel like that in our history that hasn't worked out so well. We really want somebody who's entrenched in the market. They know the people, they know buying habits and all those things, and maybe they're connected with the Chamber of Commerce and schools. We feel like that those are really our hometown heroes that have done really well.
So how far out do you let a franchisee of an existing location go and not lose that cultural connectivity to the community and to the things that are also so important to the day-to-day of the brand?
That's exactly right. So we have a training platform where after you get your first store open, you can actually train your associates in-house. So as you get ready for store number 2 and 3, it's much easier. That first store, you're having to send key personnel out to training facilities that we have located throughout our footprint, but you still may have traveling costs and those type of things that you're going to incur, getting that first team up and running.
So when you talked earlier, and we were joking about maybe 1 or 2 people out there who haven't heard of Zaxby's, and we kind of brought a little more clarity to what the menu's offerings are all about. Talk about the footprint, though, of how many states you're in and how you develop and what the belief is about helter-skelter running over states to get to states that are further west than the 2 or 3 that you jumped over versus concurrent circles and growing out. Talk to the audience about your plans how you perceive that as something of importance in your development plans or not.
A lot of the decisions that are happening here within the organization are being fueled, and also a part of our discussions include our franchisees. So we have advisory councils, representatives from our franchisee family that will come in. So the new building prototypes that we have, they'll come in and give feedback. I mean, so these are the people that would actually be building these prototypes, and so we absolutely want their buy-in. We've seen some other brands that have struggled with that, and we've seen some brands that have done really well with a new prototype rollout. And so, we want that feedback from our franchisees that are living and breathing the brand day and day. So that's not at all what we're about. We want to make sure that the communication stays fluid between us and our franchisees.
I've got one more question before we move to Southeast Franchise Forum that I want to ask about the Zaxby's brand, and that is, knowing as much as I do about the strength of culture here, what does the brand encourage franchisees to do in terms of giving back? Is there a national charity or is there a national initiative, or do you just encourage franchisees at the local level to adopt certain of their pet charities that they want to support?
That's, it really, we tried to actually mandate that early on, but it's hard to track the things that franchisees are doing. And a big reason why we wanted to do that was to be able to brag on them and to be able to kind of showcase what they were doing in some of these communities. And so, our franchisees, they know the value of taking care of their first responders and and giving back to these communities. We want to be community partners. So what we want are franchisees that are, certainly taking care of our guests as they come in the door, but we also want to be a part of the school systems, PTO, and those things to make sure that they know that, we're there for the long term, and we want to try to give back a part of the bounty that God has been able to, give to Zaxby's back to these communities.
So with that said, let's talk about the Southeast Franchise Forum. You and I have both been active in that organization, me for about 80 or 90 years longer than you, but you've got about 12 years worth of traction under your belt now too. Tell the audience a little bit about CEF and what it does and what it's meant to you, especially when you came into franchising from outside of our world.
Yeah, it was, and that's where you and I first met, Stan. I had the pleasure of meeting you for the very first time there, and then certainly after CEF, we had interactions at IFA. But just was for me, a tremendous opportunity to network with franchising professionals and suppliers. And that's what CEF has always been about. It's a regional organization really established to foster these professional relationships. And, we want to enhance the reputation of franchising through the exchange of information, ideas, networking solutions. So that's what we've been about in the past. And there's more, as you know, there's more franchisors based kind of in the Atlanta area, really, than anywhere else in the U.S. And I want to say there's about 30 FBNs, franchise business networks, that are across the U.S. And it's my understanding that the Southeast Franchise Forum is one of the more heavily attended events because of the people we have in our backyard, and we feel very fortunate of that. And we really want to be, Atlanta's resource in franchising.
But talk to the audience about what they should do in terms of, not everybody's going to have a CEF in their backyard. So talk about the FBN and how we're affiliated with that, and how you would advise franchisors that are emerging franchisors and even their teams of people on staff to benefit from organizations around the country that offer programs like ours.
Yeah, absolutely. Super easy. So, depending on what area of the country you're in, go to franchising.org, which is the IFA's website. When you go there, in the search bar, type in Franchise Business Network, you're going to see a list of all the regional areas that you have that will be closest to you to be able to attend. And they will vary depending on how often they meet. So there are 4 FBN meetings that IFA would really encourage these FBNs to have each, quarterly, but some only meet twice a year. With the CEF, with Southeast Franchise Forum, in historically we've had 12 meetings, once a month that we're meeting. It's the second Tuesday of every month, and the intention of these FBNs really was, we have the annual IFA meetings that are happening, and they wanted to have the ability of having discussions and meetings and group gatherings that are happening on a local level, that IFA is saying, here are some topics that you can talk about that we feel like that are important to franchising. And so those 4 topics that they give us each year, we don't have to adhere to them 100%, but these are the things that are really important to IFA that they feel like that we should be in discussion about.
And what kind of value proposition does this provide, do you think, for emerging Zors? Well, the networking obviously is awesome, but I mean, when you've got a meeting and a program, how valuable and important was that to you as you began your education in franchising?
Well, yeah, it just, the people that are in the room at these franchise business networks, you're going to have attorneys that are in franchising specific law firms that, you may have a question. You haven't assembled your FDD yet. These FBN meetings are open to IFA members. So it's not just, the Southeast Franchise Forum, either you're a supplier or franchisor member, but, the 4 meetings we have a year that are luncheons, they're open to IFA members. Or if you're getting ready to start franchising your brand, or you're considering that, it's a tremendous opportunity to talk to people that are established franchisors. They're emerging. They're just, they're all along the way in kind of this, in their journey, and just the ability to have just some really good dialogue with people you might not have the opportunity to speak with otherwise.
And we talk a lot about who it is we think that we serve, right? We know it's all franchising, but what's our mission, Trey, here in the Atlanta area with the Southeast Franchise Forum in terms of bringing in middle managers and people who may only get the education that is provided to them within their own 4 walls on a weekly basis? What value prop do you think there is for those middle level people to enhance their careers and actually become better stewards of resources for their employers because of their knowledge base being increased and enhanced?
Absolutely. It's my understanding, I was not around when the Southeast Franchise Forum began, but it's my understanding that it was a lot of C-suite executives, and we certainly have those still in our presence at CEF, but there are a lot of people that are coming up within a brand's organization. When I came on board with Zaxby's, you really no background in franchising. This was another resource for me to get engaged in franchising, find out what's going on within the industry. If you want to be really good at something, you need to just dive 100% in and try to focus on your craft and what you're doing. And these are people that are very passionate about what they're doing. And it's all across the board, from different facets of franchising, whether it's in the restaurant space, hospitality. You've got people that are in the automotive side. So it's not just specific to restaurants. So it's people from all walks of life in franchising that, they're facing some of the same issues, whether it's labor, if it's logistics, those things we kind of touch on from a month to month basis, things that we feel like that our members really would like some additional information on, and maybe some perspectives they haven't thought of.
So that we can help you stay in touch with those who have learned from you today, Trey, I think it's time for us to ask for some contact info, and I want you to give contact info in terms of both organizations. So anyone who's got specific questions or wants to learn more specifically about the forum and or about Zaxby's, how best to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so really easy. If you got some information, like some information on the Southeast Franchise Forum, it's just that name. It's the southeastfranchiseforum.com. And there, if you happen to visit our website, you'll find that there's you can see all of our members that are a part of SEF. You can also see how, if you're a supplier or if you're a franchisor, how you can become a member of the organization. And, something that we also provide as a resource is our previous meetings that we have. We actually, a lot of times, we're able to kind of post those things on our website. So it's a great resource for you to be able to go and share with your teams, whether it's in HR or if it's in operations. And that's what we try to do each month. If there's something specific area of your business, we try to encourage you to bring those individuals that we feel like we get the most value out of that. And then on the Zaxby side, the thing that pays the bills day to day, the things I'm very passionate about. So that's very easy. If you want to go to our consumer side, it's zaxbys.com. And if you'd like to learn more about the incredible Zaxby's franchising opportunity, that's zaxbysfranchising.com. And there we try to be as transparent as possible. So we don't make you jump through a lot of hoops. If you're looking to learn more about the brand, you'll find a little bit about our history. You'll see that it's very easy to get our franchise disclosure document. Some franchisors don't want you to see that until you're a little further along in the process. We're very open with giving it to really whoever would like to see that. Shows audited financials and those type of things, and makes an earnings representation in item 19. But happy to share that with anyone that has additional interest.
Trey, it's been terrific having you with us today. As I said, long overdue. You're one of the most giving people that I know, and I can't thank you enough for giving some time here to the audience to benefit and learn more about the Southeast Franchise Forum, your leadership in that organization, and your role at Zaxby's as well. Trey Doster, thanks again for joining us today on Franchise Today.
Stan, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure being on your show today.
And please remember to subscribe to Franchise Today at Blog Talk Radio, and that you can download us from iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, or virtually any place that podcasts are found. Remember, too, you can ask Alexa to play the latest episode. Please like us on Facebook, and let me hear from you with recommendations for guest interviews, as well as any thoughts or comments you'd like to share about the podcast. You can find all my contact info on my LinkedIn profile, and I'll be happy to hear from you, good, bad, or ugly. Until next week, I'm Stan Friedman. I'm wishing you the best, the very best of all things franchising. Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. No excuses, just solutions. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another live episode of Franchise Today. Or, as always, download episodes on demand at blogtalkradio.com or iTunes.
When it's PCS time, you know the drill. Pack, research the new base, get the kids in school, because family supports family. At American Public University, we support military families with flexible, affordable online education that moves with you. As a military spouse, your tuition rate is the same as your partner's, just $250 per credit hour. American Public University, education that moves with you. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.